One thing that must be said from the jump, from the outset, is that this 2016 NFL draft is shaping up to be a very, very interesting one. And it just seems to get more interesting as time goes along. You look at last year's draft, it was a boring draft to watch because there wasn't a lot of trade activity, in particular in round one. Those trades give us things to talk about. And now we've had the number one overall pick traded in this year's draft and the number two overall pick in this year's draft traded. And who knows if the Chargers trade number three or one or two teams in the top 10 decide to trade back as well. There could be all types of craziness still to come with all the craziness that we've already had. So from an NFL fan standpoint and an NFL draft head standpoint, God, I'm loving the way this year's draft is shaping up just from the standpoint of before the draft has even begun. It's given us these weeks of talking points, these weeks of something to actually talk about. Incredible. But now with that being said, fans, draft media, sports media, they love to talk about these big draft trades. And there will always be this attempt to create certain types of narratives about the trade from one team's standpoint or the other. You see that with the Tennessee Titans and the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams, some people are arguing, are a quarterback away, which is completely and totally ridiculous. But the Titans, it made all the sense in the world to peel back from 1 to 15, even though there is a huge drop-off in talent between player 1 and player 15 in this draft, because they had to get those additional picks. And the additional picks are what matter. You need the draft pick currency. And yes, I'm a guy that talks quite a bit about draft pick currency. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to execution. That's what really, really matters. It'll be interesting to see how that trade turns out, especially since the Rams were on the opposite end of this 4 years earlier with the RG3 deal, or as we might affectionately call him now, Browns fans, RG Knee. So, we've got the Eagles peeling up to number 2, and the Browns peeling back now to number 8. And you see these different narratives being created about the Eagles and that Doug Peterson wants to have the quarterback position set up for years, that maybe the Eagles are a quarterback away, and that is, of course, complete hogwash, complete and utter crap. And then the Browns. And people are sitting there talking about how smart this is and how non-Browns of a move this is. And the simple fact of the matter is, nothing could be further from the truth, and I will talk about this in a moment. To me, it is a shame when the NFL draft media, the sports media, can't be bothered to do their simple job, and that is to educate themselves on the scientific evidence, the facts, actually bother to do the research. Instead, it is all about creating certain narratives, no matter how much they don't stick, no matter how much bullshit they truly are. And I assure you, especially when it comes to the Cleveland Browns standpoint in this whole deal, this is like history repeating itself. It's the same old business. There is nothing un-Browns about it. In fact, this is the epitome of the Cleveland Browns again. This is why they're the skid marks. New regime, same decision making. New regime, same type of moves. But now, magically, this time, the results are going to be different. Didn't we just say this a couple of years ago when they basically did the same damn thing? I'm just saying. And I look at this particular deal for both teams. Whereas with Tennessee and the Rams, it made some sense to me from each perspective. I could get it, especially if it works out. When I look at this from both the Eagles and Browns standpoint, it really, frankly, doesn't make a whole lot of freaking sense whatsoever. It makes me sit there and ask, what the hell are the Browns and Eagles doing? Because here's the simple fact of the matter. You look at the Philadelphia Eagles standpoint first, and people are talking about what they gave up. We need to peel back a little bit, because they technically didn't give up the 8th pick, if you really want to get technical about it, because they had to trade up 5 spots to get there. This is a team that has now traded up twice in round number 1 already. Twice! So technically, if you want to get official about it, there have already been 3 trades of top 10 picks in this draft. When you look at it from the Eagles standpoint, they effectively really gave up the 13th overall pick in this draft, Byron Maxwell, Kiko Alonso, a 3rd round pick, a 4th round pick this year, a 1st round pick in 2017, and a 2nd round pick in 2018. So they gave up a mid-1st round pick, with 2 players, a third and the fourth in this year's draft, when they already didn't have a second-round pick because that was given up as part of the Sam Bradford package last offseason. Now they've also cost themselves a first-round pick in 2017 and a second-round pick in 2018. So similar to how the Sam Bradford deal impacted the Eagles organization negatively from a draft pick currency standpoint in 2 drafts, in 15 and 16. Now this deal here to move up 6 slots from 8 to 2 to go get a quarterback has potentially negatively impacted their draft positioning, their draft pick currency for 3 drafts, 16, 17, and 18. And I promise you, no matter how much anybody wants to spin this, at some point in time, those chickens come home to roost. This is completely ridiculous. If you're the Eagles, you had to know from Jump Street at the beginning of this process, and if you didn't, then people should have their heads rolled. People should be canned. Ass clowns should be fired. You had to know you had a desire for a quarterback. So if that was the case, why in the bluest of blue fucks would you give Sam Bradford $16 million to $18 million a year for the next 2 years? Why in the fuck would you do that? Knowing that you were going to be looking to trade up and get a quarterback. Knowing that you were going to sacrifice most of this year's draft, a very important part of next year's draft, and an important part of the following year's draft potentially to have to go get a quarterback. Why would you give Sam Bradford all that money? Short term or not, doesn't matter. He is already established in St. Louis, and now here in Philadelphia. He ain't the dude. He's not that guy. So why would you pay him like he kind of sort of could be the guy? All the while knowing that you're still trading up to get the quarterback any fucking ways. And then you look at Chase Daniel. They paid him well. They paid him real well to be a backup quarterback. You're tying so much money out of your salary cap into a mediocre starting quarterback that has trouble staying healthy. And an upper tier backup quarterback maybe, and we don't even know if that's necessarily the case or not. And then you're looking at giving up all of these draft picks throughout the next 3 drafts in 2016, 17, and 18 to move up 6 slots to now sit there and basically guarantee almost $20 million to a quarterback who you know this team is going to look to sit for all of 2016 and in an ideal world for them because they're idiots 2017 as well. And furthermore, in particular, if they're talking about taking Carson Wentz at number 2 because Jared Goff goes number 1, Carson Wentz is already a 23-plus-year-old dude. You're talking about having him sit for another 2 years. By the time he's a starter, he's going to be 25, 26 years old potentially. And this whole thought process, this whole logic that it's better off if quarterbacks sit nowadays just doesn't hold fucking water. Would Luck have been better off if he sat? No. Would Russell Wilson have been better off if he sat? No. Was Eli Manning really that much better off for sitting some of the season behind Kurt Warner? No. When Big Ben got his opportunity very early on in 2004, did he need to sit anymore? No. Is he better off for not sitting? Yes. Phillip Rivers sat for 2 years. You could argue that he's better off for it. Aaron Rodgers sat for 3 years, and he's better off for it. But Phillip Rivers was also backing up Drew Brees. Aaron Rodgers was also backing up a first ballot Hall of Famer who the entire Hall of Fame presentation in terms of trying to present him as a Hall of Fame candidate took all of 6 damn seconds. Andrew Luck didn't need it. Russell Wilson didn't need it. You know, Derek Carr played it right away. He's better off for it. Blake Bortles played right away. He's better off for it. You look at this past year's draft. Both Winston and Mariota are better off because they played right away. Did they need to sit a year or two? This whole mindset, this whole logic that quarterbacks have to sit and that's the best way for them to learn is complete and utter bullshit. Because even those guys that sat for a couple of seasons and benefited from it, it was a different situation. Sam Bradford is no Drew Brees. Sam Bradford most certainly is not fucking Brett Favre. So when you look at investing the number 2 overall pick in a quarterback, you're envisioning him being the long-term franchise guy. Why the hell would you delay the starting of the clock on that? Why the hell would you want to wait at all? Get there as soon as possible. Because part of the reason you traded up so goddamn much to get him is because the guy that you just paid 16 to 18 million guaranteed a year for the next 2 years clearly is established throughout his career. He's not a franchise guy. So at this point in time, that would make the rookie at least as equally qualified right away to start as this mediocre starting quarterback. This guy's upside is much, much higher. This is the guy you go with. This is just so stupid. From the Eagles' standpoint, you're bringing in now a rookie quarterback who you're going to ask to sit, whether that's not beneficial. And then over the next couple of years, you're incredibly hamstrung in terms of the NFL draft because of the stupidity of the different moves that you have made. So even when you've had him wait, what type of situation are you bringing him into? For the knuckleheads that sit there and say waiting is the best way to go. Well, if he's waiting and the talent's not any better, in fact, it's worse because they've been impacted so negatively in the loss of draft pick currency over the past couple of years, how is that quarterback, that young quarterback, going to be any more likely to succeed at the NFL level? That makes absolutely no fucking sense. And at the end of the day, this deal made absolutely no fucking sense to me for the Philadelphia Eagles. And I say that with some hesitation because of the fact that I am a huge fan of Carson Wentz. To me, he's the number one quarterback in this draft by a little bit of a margin. I think he should be the number one overall pick in this draft. But when you look at it, yes, if you get that franchise guy, you're right, it doesn't matter. And I'll give you a perfect example. In 1998, I think everybody knew, and I've said my things about him over the years, that's for sure. But I don't deny it, he's one of the greatest of all time. Arguably the greatest regular season quarterback of all time. And most certainly is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Peyton Manning is sitting there at number one overall. And you're a team that wants him so bad, you're willing to mortgage the entire 1998 draft and give up a first rounder in 99 as well. So maybe you miss out on Edgerrin James the next year. Do you do that to get Peyton Manning? The absolute answer is an unequivocal yes. And if you would say no, you are a clown and never ever talk about football or in particular the NFL draft again. Of course you would. If you get that franchise guy, it makes all the difference in the world. But the fact of the matter is a lot of times when teams trade up for quarterbacks, that occasion where it does work, but a lot of times it doesn't. And there's no guarantee that this is going to work either. So from the Eagles' standpoint, you're tying up so much of your salary cap over the next couple of years into the quarterback position where you have so many deficiencies in talent on both sides of the ball. How are you going to be able to effectively address those positions? How are you going to be able to re-sign and pay some of your key players and performers? These are serious questions. I'm all for investing heavily in the quarterback position, but there comes a point in time where you have to say you've invested all this money in Bradford, this money in Daniel. Now you're going to invest all this money in a young quarterback who, by the way, is not going to play right away. And oh, by the way, we basically won't give him any other fucking help in this year's draft. You won't get as much help in the next year's draft or the following year's draft either. And he didn't get a lot of help from the previous year's draft. What type of situation is that for a young quarterback to get in? But then we get to the Cleveland Browns. Oh my God, Christ almighty. And I've been going off on this on Twitter the past couple of days because to me it is so clear to see. Some people, I think, get it. Some people don't. Some people want to be positive about it, and that's fine. I don't know why the fuck you would with the Cleveland skid marks. I don't know, because there is no reason to give them any benefit of the doubt whatsoever. This is an organization that exhibits a repeated, pathetic pattern of performance and decision-making that always seems to be the same and always seems to come up snake eyes. They always suck. They're always stupid, and they always do the wrong goddamn thing. Now I see people like Yahoo columnist Dan Wetzel talking about how this is un-Browns and this is a different time and a different organization. Ding dong, dumb dick. No, it's fucking not. If you actually bother to do your research, and there are many others like Wetzel, I just called his out, but many others too trying to say this is un-Browns, this is an analytics thing, this is Deep Podesta, Jackson is brilliant, it's genius. Well, if these are the analytics that the Browns are going to use, then might I suggest that their analytics absolutely fucking suck? Because let's take a look here for a second. Again, I bothered to do my research. So I'm speaking from a somewhat educated viewpoint, unlike it seems like pretty much all the goddamn sports media when it comes to this trade in the Cleveland Browns. This whole narrative about how it's different for this organization is utter bullshit. Let me spell that out for you. Bullshit. BROWNS, skid marks. You get the point. This trading down is nothing new or nothing different for this team. Since 2009's draft, they've done it 3 damn times. In 2009, they traded back from pick 5. In 2011, they traded way back from pick 6. In 2014, they traded back from pick 4 to pick 9. That's 3 times. 3 times since 2009 that they had a top 6 pick and traded it back. And how did that go for this team? Oh, it went so well that they were picking number 2 overall originally in this year's fucking draft. Just think about how ridiculous and stupid this sounds. How the hell is this something new or different for this organization when they did it in 2009, 2011, and 2014? And let's look at those 3 deals. 2009, the Jets traded up from 17 to 5 to get Mark Sanchez. Yes, the Browns sat there and peeled back, and they probably looked good for not taking Mark Sanchez that high. And yes, they traded back a little bit more, and they ended up getting Alex Mack. I think it was with the 21st overall pick in that draft. If I'm a pick or 2 off, sue me, go fuck yourselves. I'm close enough. At least I bothered to do my goddamn research here. So you could sit there and argue that that wasn't a bad deal for them. But they did all this maneuvering and trading down, and the media and fans love to talk about it because it's something great, it's something awesome. But what has Alex Mack really meant to that team? And furthermore, if it was such a great deal, where are those other picks? And why is this team still consistently picking in the top 5 or top 10? The answer is you shouldn't be trading elite picks like this on a consistent basis and expecting the results to bear out well. In part, I think, as much as anything else, because when you're a team and you begin the piecing together of the draft board and you're setting your draft strategy, you're initially setting your strategy as if you're picking at a certain spot, in particular in round number 1. Now all of a sudden you go and you trade that. You haven't prepared yourself. And in particular from the Browns standpoint, when they traded back from 5 to 17, surely when they went into that process, they were preparing everything as if they were picking in the top 5. So they were investing the majority of their efforts into the talents they thought were top 10 type guys. And they trade back. It just shakes up the dynamics of everything. It's not like they busted out on Alex Mack. He's been a good, solid center in the NFL the past several years. But what did it really matter? And what did they get out of those other picks? I'll wait. Exactly. Let's look at 2011. This is a perfect example of why you don't trade out of a marquee spot. The Cleveland Browns traded back from the 6th overall pick to 27, where the Falcons were. Eventually, the Browns moved up to where Kansas City originally was at 21 to make their first-round pick. But the Cleveland Browns passed up on Julio Jones. So you could sit there and say, well, they got a first-round pick out of it, a second-round pick out of it, the first-round pick the following year, and da-da-da-da-da. Would you rather have all those picks, or would you rather have Julio fucking Jones? Or furthermore, if we want to flip to the opposite side of the ball, you can take all those picks and pound them up your ass. Would you rather have had Phil Taylor, which is who they took at 21st overall, or would you rather stay the fuck put at number 6 and take a J.J. Watt? And yes, I realize hindsight can be a bit 20/20 when it comes to the prospects. But these are these people's jobs in the NFL, scouting departments, front offices. They're supposed to be able to project these players and their future performance at the NFL level. They're supposed to be, God forbid, able to evaluate fucking talent, which clearly the Cleveland Browns have never set up an infrastructure where they can do anything closely, remotely like that. So you want to talk about all these picks that they got. Excuse me. So what did they do with them? So they got a first-round pick in 2012. Whoop-de-doo! So basically what you're telling me is that instead of taking Julio Jones or J.J. Watt, they basically ended up with Phil Taylor and Brandon Weeden, who was that first-round pick the next year in 2012. How does that make any fucking sense? Who in the bluest of blue fucks would ever make that deal? I'll tell you who, the Cleveland fucking Browns. And then just 2 years ago, the 2014 draft, a similar situation arose. The Browns traded back from 4 to 9. And everybody's praising them. Oh my God, they got a 1st and 4th round pick next year. I even talked about the fact that they could be power players and they got great draft pick currency. But it's the Browns. And of course it was the Browns. So you're in a situation in a draft class that is solid and really loaded at wide receiver. And somehow you manage to fuck it up. You trade back from 4 to 9 to then trade up from 9 to 8. And instead of just staying put at number 4 and taking Sammy Watkins your goddamn self, or even better, taking Khalil Mack, or taking Mike Evans, or taking somebody like, Odell Beckham Jr., or taking somebody like Aaron Donald, or peeling back to number 9, staying your fucking ass there, and taking an Odell Beckham Jr. or an Aaron Donald, this dumb dick organization traded back to 9 to go up to 8 to get Justin Gilbert, and then made another move later on in the draft so that way they could get fucking Johnny Football. And the first round pick they got in 2015 out of this draft trade in 2014, they turned it into Cameron Erving. So let me fucking ask you this yet again. Who the hell would you rather have? Would you rather have Justin Gilbert and Cameron Erving? Or would you rather have just stayed put at number 4 for the Browns and taken Khalil Mack or Mike Evans or Odell Beckham Jr. or Aaron fucking Donald? Do you see the history here? Do you see the pattern? Do you see the trend? Again, instead of staying in a position where they could have taken an elite level talent, they traded too far goddamn back, didn't know what the fuck they were doing, and of course, as the Browns, to cap it all off, they made the wrong damn decisions. So now somehow magically, because there is a new regime, just like there were new regimes in 09, in 11, in 2014, now somehow the new regime has basically made the same goddamn fundamental move again. I don't care how much draft pick currency they got, it's the same goddamn fundamental move. And all of a sudden, this is different. If these are DePodesta's analytics, you could take them and pound them up your ass. They fucking suck. At the end of the day in the NFL, you need a franchise quarterback. And the Cleveland Browns were in a position, Wentz, Goff, frankly, didn't matter. Sure, the preference should have been Wentz, but Goff could still be that dude. You're in position at number 2. How could you fuck this up? You take the goddamn quarterback there and figure out everything else later. Now you're talking about situations where people are saying, well, they can go get Paxton Lynch a little bit later. What, take him fucking 8th overall or trade back a little bit more to take a quarterback with second-round talent in the top 10 or in the middle of the first round? How does that make any fucking sense? Or people sitting there and saying, well, they could just have all those picks and they can make a big move up in 2017. Well, why fucking wait another year to get the guy? Why not get the guy this year when the guy is there in this year's draft? Because you don't know how the fuck the next year's draft class is going to play out. So many people with their mock drafts heading up into the 2015 college football season would have had in some configuration or order 1, 2, 3, Hackenberg, Cook, Cardale Jones as their top 3 guys. And chances are none of them are going in first round. None of them might even go in the round number 2. So how the fuck do you know how things are going to play out? How the fuck do you know that any of those quarterbacks that are potentially in that 17 class are going to be worth a top 10 or even top 5 pick? You don't know. You know that that guy is there in this year's draft. You fucking take him. This is so Cleveland Browns. This fascination with, well, they got all these fucking picks. They didn't do shit with them in 09. They didn't do shit with them in 2011. They didn't do shit with them in 2014, 2015. What the fuck makes this any different? Different regime making the same decisions. Why the hell would you think the results would be any goddamn different? And frankly, if a team is stupid enough to trade out a position where they don't have a quarterback, they think signing RG3 is good enough for them for now, that they would trade out of getting a franchise quarterback when that's the one thing they've needed since they came back into existence in 1999. They've wasted multiple first-round picks on and never been able to find the dude. Why the fuck would they sit there and trade back now? And the whole notion of even trading back or picking a quarterback later. How'd that work in 07 with Brady Quinn? How'd that work in 2012 with Brandon Weeden? How did that work in 2014 with Johnny Manziel? These were all drafts, granted, where they had 2 first-round picks. I'll grant you that. But it's still waiting to take the quarterback later. All 3 of them, they were old craps. They never gave Brady Quinn an opportunity. They sabotaged him from Jump Street. Brandon Weeden, God only knows. And Johnny Manziel, we all fucking know. So what, they're going to do this again? Instead of sitting at number 2 and saying, hey, we've got our choice of Jared Goff or Carson Wentz, 2 potential franchise quarterbacks. Or saying, hey, we don't like any of those quarterbacks. We don't think they're worth that slot. But we're in a position at number 2 where we could still have our choice of anybody else, basically. You know, we can pick Jalen Ramsey. We can pick Laremy Tunsil. We can pick Myles Jack. We can pick DeForest Buckner. We can pick Ezekiel Elliott, who, along with Carson Wentz, those other 5 guys I named, are the 6 elite prospects in this goddamn draft class. Now the Cleveland Browns, of course, have traded back out of that to number 8 to where what are they going to do now at number 8? And assuming that they don't trade back again, they're going to take Paxton Lynch or they're going to take fucking Joey. That would be the Browns in a nutshell. They traded back and took fucking Joey Bosa. How stupid can you be? Or maybe they take Darren Lee. Or maybe they're lucky. maybe they're lucky and Ezekiel Elliott is still there on the board. Or maybe they decide, we're going to move on from Joe Thomas long term. We're going to take a Ronnie Stanley or a Jack Conklin. That almost seems like a fucking pick for them too. So being in a position at number 2 where you could have gotten your hands on whatever of these elite prospects you really wanted, and if Wentz is there at 2 potentially, you have the 6 best prospects in the goddamn draft on the board. These 6 clear-cut elite guys in this draft class. And you passed up on the opportunity to potentially take any and all 6 of them. So that way you can move back to 8 to get into the second tier because you don't know what the fuck you're doing. And the Cleveland Browns, to me, until proven otherwise, don't know what the fuck they're doing. Like this old notion of people talking about Paxton Lynch at number 8. Are you out of your goddamn mind? They better pray to God Ezekiel Elliott falls to them at 8 because that's got to be the pick. You can't sit there and tell me you're going to take a quarterback that's a second-round talent in the top 10 over a running back who's a top 5 player in this class. I mean, that's just insanity. That is just pure madness. I mean, you've got Pro Bowl, all-pro, clear-cut talents, especially in the likes of Ramsey, Tunsil, Jack, and Elliott. And you pass up on taking any of them to accumulate additional draft picks. It's history repeating itself all over again. And I don't know how I can state this any more clearly. And I think I've made the case pretty clearly that this is the same old Browns, the same old skid marks that we've grown accustomed to since 1999. They're still going to be looking for the franchise quarterback. They're still going to do things the exact same way. They're still going to blow the draft. And nothing is going to fucking change. Period. Why at this point in time, and maybe I'm proven wrong. Maybe this is the fluke thing where the Browns proved me wrong. But in this case, what the hell leads you to believe that the Browns will be right when history clearly isn't on their side? This isn't anything new or different for the Cleveland Browns, goddammit. This is business as usual. These are the same old skid marks that we've seen for years. And anybody to assert anything different is completely insane and ridiculous. And it needs to stop. And the narratives need to stop. So from my opinion, from my standpoint, this deal makes no goddamn sense really from either team's standpoint. It could pay off long-term potentially for the Eagles if they end up with Carson Wentz because he can be that dude. He can be that franchise guy. He can maybe even make some people, compare him someday to Donovan McNabb and who's the better Eagles quarterback all time. But they gave up a lot to get him. And they've hamstrung themselves from a draft standpoint the next couple of years. Even if you feel Carson Wentz is finally ready to take the snaps or Jared Goff is finally ready to take the snaps, what the hell type of situation is he going to walk into? And frankly, for any prospect, any talent, when it comes to the Cleveland Browns, what the hell type of situation are you walking into? Jesus, what a dumb trade.